Bismillah walhamdulillah wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I hope that Allah Azza wa Jal had blessed you. I hope that Allah Azza wa Jal had given you the best and will keep to give you the best. Ameen Rabbil Alameen. Jazakumullah khairah for joining me in this weekly broadcast lecture on Islamic etiquette, Adab Al-Shar'iyyah. So this is the fifth one, our fifth meeting, our fifth lecture, inshaAllah Azza wa Jal. And from last week, alhamdulillah, we have 5 questions. And I'll answer those questions, inshaAllah, at the end, plus perhaps anything that you will add right now. So if you have questions as we go on, and I'm able to catch it, inshaAllah, I'll add it to the list. Otherwise, if I cannot get to it today, inshaAllah, I'll get to it next week. But at least we have 5 questions, inshaAllah, for today. One of them is, can we backbite non-Muslims? If backbiting Muslims is haram, is it possible to backbite non-Muslims? Plus some other questions, inshallah. So today what we'll be doing, inshallah, is finishing up the sins of the tongue. So we've talked previously in general about them. They've talked specifically about few of the problems that we have when we speak. And today, inshallah, there are 3 main things that we'll be talking about. One is obscenities, like speaking with obscenity. And the other one is mockery, mocking and making fun of other people. And the last one is lying. That's the big one, right? Lying. So we'll get to it, inshaAllah Azza wa Jal. And the author says, the poet Al-Mardawi rahimahullah, he says, the following is forbidden. Al-Fuhsh, he begins by Al-Fuhsh. And he also includes in that verse of poetry Al-Bada. Fuhsh and Bada are the same. So we'll talk about them as one, which is what? Obscenities when you speak. Using obscene language. Now fuhsh, let's say in particular, let's focus on fuhsh. When you find it mentioned in the Quran, al-fahsha, typically it refers to what? Typically it refers to big sins, especially obscene sins, like zina, fornication and adultery. In fact, any illicit intercourse, right, sexual relation is called fahsha. So it's like the big sin. So something that is big is fahish in Arabic language. If someone is tall, too tall, they could call him fahish al-tul, man, he's too tall. So fahish linguistically, it doesn't mean bad, it just means a lot of something. So fahsha, it's this big sin. So specifically, anything in relation to something that is obscene, in act or in speech. So now we're talking about the tongue, so in speech. So this is what fahsha means. The Prophet ﷺ says, "Inna Allah la yuhibbu al-fuhsha wa al-tafahush." That Allah Azza wa Jal does not love fuhsh, meaning speaking with obscenities, or at-tafahush, meaning pretending or trying to acquire that trait. So some people have already acquired it. So whenever they speak with obscenities. Some people don't have it, but they think they want to become like them, so try to acquire it. That is tafahush, trying to acquire. So as you can acquire, subhanAllah, as you can acquire good qualities, you can also acquire bad ones. As you can acquire good habits, you can acquire bad ones. And both of them needs to become a habit. They need to become a habit. They're not a habit yet, but they need to become a habit. So Allah Azza wa Jal does not love this. And the Prophet ﷺ also, as described, لَمْ يَكُنْ فَاحِشًا وَلَا مُتَفَحِّشًا. He was not fahish or mutafahish. That when he speaks, he chooses the best when he speaks, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. He does not insult people. He does not violate their haya, their shyness, by using obscene, vulgar language. So even to the extent that when some of the people of the book came to him sallallahu alaihi wasallam and they said, instead of saying assalamu alaikum, they said assamu alaikum, and Aisha radiallahu anha heard that and started giving it back to them. How could you say this? Or so she was harsh with them. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to her, "Mah ya Aisha, stop, O Aisha. ما كان الرفق في شيء إلا زانه." Whenever gentleness is in something, It always beautifies it. And he says, also he told her, don't be fahisha or Aisha. Okay, don't use fuhsh. He doesn't mean that she was using obscene language, no, but don't be harsh with them. Don't be too harsh with them. Why? Because she said, didn't you not hear what they were saying about you or to you? Because they're making dua against you. So he said, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, well, I said, wa alaykum, and I said, and upon you. So whatever they said, I said upon you, and that was enough. That was sufficient. I didn't need to go beyond that and insult them and attack them. So he called that, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, even that, which is sort of excessive insults, not obscene, not vulgar in any sexual way, but just excessive, meaning that he looked at it, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, as beyond what is needed. He called it fuhsh. So he, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, even did not even go beyond what is needed in speaking, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, especially in attacking someone or insulting someone. If they say something and they prayed that he would die, the only thing that he said, wa alaykum, that is whatever. If I misheard you, let's say, and your greeting is a proper greeting, then for you. And if I heard you right and your greeting was a dua against me, then for you. So whatever your intention, whatever you act, goes back to you, and I don't need to say anything more. So al-fuhsh, this is something that Allah Azza wa Jal hates, and the Prophet ﷺ was not, and Prophet ﷺ hates also. So the Prophet ﷺ said, let's say some hadith about it. He says, al-bada'u min al-jafa' wal-jafa'u fi an-nar. He said, ﷺ, obscenity or speaking with obscenity is from jafa', is from harshness and rudeness. That is, the person who says it either is the person who's harsh and rude, or they become harsh and rude, whatever it is. But he's saying that al-bada' is from jafa'. If they lead to each other, they come together. So if you have it, you'll become rude and harsh. And he says the one who's rude and harsh is in hellfire. So it's a path. So the person who's using vulgar language, okay, and I'll tell, maybe we'll talk about it, why some of us use that, but the person who's using vulgar language, right, that is going to lead you to a trait or to a quality or to a character that Allah Azza wa Jal hates, and that will lead into hellfire. He said also that it is from hypocrisy. Al-bada'u wal-bayanu min al-nifaq. That is obscenity or vulgarity when you speak, and also excessive speech where you're trying to pretend that you're something but you're not. So bayan, right? That's what it means. Bayan in itself is fine. Bayan is very simply to express yourself. Allamahu al-bayan. But that's not what he means, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, in that hadith. Bayan meaning what? Artificial speech, excessive speech, pretense when you speak. That's the one. That's from hypocrisy. Because the hypocrites, when they speak, they pretend, and when they speak, they lie. They augment, they exaggerate. I am this and I am that. I did this and I did that. They did none of this and they're none of that. Says that's hypocrisy from it. Because that resembles what the hypocrites do. But also he said vulgarity when speaking is from the acts of the hypocrites. So also one of the traits of the hypocrites is that they speak like that. So a person who adopts vulgarity in their speech, they become like the hypocrites. And if they continue with that, they will start acquiring the attributes of the hypocrites. Until if they do not stop, that will take them into hellfire. So it's not something that is simple. Now why do some people do it? Some people think, well, it's, it makes them popular or accepted, or they're funny when they do it. So when you look at what is popular, right, what's in the media, especially coming right from the West, if you want to be funny, use vulgarity. And the more of it, the funnier you are. And if you have friends or people that you think are cool and you look up to, and they are obscene in their language, obscene in their gestures, and obscene in their sittings, and you want to fit in, you become obscene like them and vulgar like them so that you can be accepted. So it's important here to know that it's not funny when you're being obscene. It's not funny because Allah Azza wa Jal hates it, and the Prophet ﷺ also hates it. And it's dragging a person who's doing it to hellfire, and it's ruining your character. It's ruining your character. It's not going to make you more popular. It's going to make you less popular. Because even if those people accept you, the people are you looking up to and you're trying, to acquire their approval, even if they accept you now, you are losing Allah's approval. And if you lose Allah's approval by this speech, then Allah Azza wa Jal, if Allah dislikes what you are doing and then ends up disliking you, then the people around you will end up disliking you. And just consider, those who are vulgar and are shunned, usually shunned, except, the exception is other vulgar people around them. But do you want to be or have those as your friends, those as your company, or as anyone who's respectable, anyone who's decent? When he hears what you're saying, they're going to run away from you. So you're chasing away the decent and the righteous and bringing to you, like a magnet, bringing to you obscene people and vulgar people because of that speech. So subhanAllah, also your speech will attract the type of people that match your speech. If your speech is righteous, the righteous will be around you. If it is impious and unrighteous, though, who do you expect is going to be around you? So that's obscenity and that is evil language. Remember that the Prophet ﷺ said that it is a sign of hypocrisy when you start speaking like this. So don't think it's attractive. It's a sign of hypocrisy, and you don't want to become a hypocrite. And it's also something that brings a person closer to hellfire. And just also think about it. If you are around some people and you speak like that and they copy you, that's the problem, right? They copy you. They start talking like this because of you. Then everything that they say because of you is also your sin, and everybody else who copies them is also your sin. So that's important. That is what we say and what we do. When we become models and examples, sometimes you don't even know who's copying you. You never even know who's copying you. But when you make sin so acceptable and so normal, and people accept it because of you, and then you become responsible for it because you've paved the way for it. Pay attention, inshallah, to this. The other one now, the next thing that we'll be talking about is deception. Now deception, I'm just going to touch on it because deception is basically lying. So we're going to, inshallah, whatever we're talking about tricking someone or deceiving someone, is basically lying to them, right? But this is a particular type of lying. This is lying in order to harm that person. In order to harm. You can just lie because you want to have fun, a practical joke. But this deception, trickery here, is to harm somebody. And Allah Azza wa Jalla, again, when He describes the hypocrites, He describes, يُخَادِعُونَ اللَّهَ وَهُوَ خَادِعُهُم. He says they try to trick Allah or deceive Allah, and Allah is the one who's deceiving them. Right? The one Allah is tricking them. That is, when you try to deceive Allah Azza wa Jalla, you end up doing what? Tricking yourself. Because Allah knows what is happening. And also they're trying to trick the believers. The hypocrites, basically their whole thing is to try to deceive and trick the believers. And so they end up also tricking and deceiving themselves. So trickery and deception is, again, what? Not a trait of a Muslim with another Muslim. That you cannot intend harm for another Muslim. Lying to them, trying to trap them. So that is a sign of hypocrites. And the Prophet ﷺ here specifically said about one particular act here related to it. مَنْ خَبَّبَ زَوْجَةَ امْرِئٍ فَلَيْسَ مِنَّا. He says the one who ruins one's wife for him is not one of us. Deceives her by sweet talking or by whatever, right? But deception in a way that ruins the relationship between her and her husband. He says, the Prophet ﷺ, he says, that person is not one of us. So what does that hadith mean? That hadith means, and this applies both for male and female. If someone goes to a spouse, a wife or a husband, and they're perfectly fine, perfectly happy with their life, they're not really complaining, but they start talking, bad things about the other half. Oh, he's supposed to do this to you. Oh, she's supposed to do that to you. And they begin to what? Fill their heart with hatred and resentment against their spouse. Whereas before there was nothing. But now, oh, you know what? You don't have enough of this. Your spouse is supposed to do more. Oh, you don't have enough of that. Your spouse is not supposed to do this. And they're trying to fill their heads with things that are not real, but just to simply turn them against their spouse. Or maybe they are real, but they're not great. Instead of telling that person, it's not a severe problem. Instead of telling them, be patient, make dua, try to fix your relationship, try to do this. Oh no, divorce him, divorce her, find another person. They're not good enough. And so they fill their heart with so much hatred that that marriage breaks. So the Prophet ﷺ says, "Man khabbaba zawjata mri'in." So somebody, like for instance, goes to someone's wife and he says, if you divorce him, I'll marry you. Something like this. So he says, if they do something like that, this is what? He's not one of us. So that's also another form of deception and corruption that the Prophet ﷺ talked about. So we're going to, that's enough for deception. We'll move inshallah to talk about sukhriya, istihza, mocking people. So ridiculing them because of something that they have or something that they don't have, because of their qualities. So this is, for instance, like what? Let's say, for instance, practical jokes. Whether this is something that we see online, something that I hope not, but we record and publish online, or something that we do with our families. Practical jokes. We hide something and we pretend that it's not there. Okay? Just to make fun of them and see how they panic, how they fall, how we can scare them. We hide, and when we just jump out of, jump all of a sudden and just scare them. And we want to see their reaction, and we mock it and we make fun of it. So practical jokes where we lie, but also where we mock. Okay? So we basically are mocking or making fun of people. We're recording people in embarrassing situations, publishing this, watching it, and laughing at it. That's mocking other people. Or mocking them, as I said, for the way that they speak, for their weight, for their height, for their color, for their hairstyle, for a mistake that they made. And making it public and sharing that, so mocking people. Right? Allah Azza wa Jal says in the Quran, لا يسخر قوم من قوم عسى أن يكونوا خيرا منهم ولا نساء من نساء عسى أن يكون خيرا منهن. Let not people mock some other people lest they be better than them, and let not a group of women mock some other group of women lest that they be better than them. So here is a direct prohibition from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, from Allah Azza wa Jal, where he says you cannot mock other people because they could be better than you, even though you're making fun of them. Okay? Or تحتقرهم, you're actually belittling them, you're looking down on them. It says if you're doing this, they could be better than you. Because when you do something like that, when you put somebody else down, not because of taqwa, right? Because the Prophet ﷺ said something to the effect of, it says, if you are red or you are black, you are not better. And you're not better than someone who's red or black. The only thing that will make you better than another person is deen and taqwa. This is an authentic hadith. The only your religion and your taqwa makes you better than another person. And basically, you cannot judge your own religiosity and taqwa versus another person. You can't. The only person who can judge that is Allah Azza wa Jal, because you don't really know what is hidden in them. What is their iman? What do they do when you don't see them? So you cannot judge their taqwa. There are some things that if they do in public, a public sin, yeah, you can point to it and say, okay, you're doing this public sin, that is haram. Okay? But ultimately, you don't know if this person is in heaven or if this person is in hell, and you don't know. When we die, will we be better than them or not? You don't know. So you can't. When you think that you're better than someone else, the reason why you think you're better than them is because of pride, kibr. And because you are looking down on them and you think that they are insignificant. And the Prophet ﷺ says, بِحَسْبِ امْرِئٍ مِنَ الشَّرِّ أَنْ يَحْقِرَ أَخَاهُ الْمُسْلِمِ. He says, it is sufficient evil for someone to look down on their Muslim brother. Or Muslim sister, of course. It's inclusive of that. So what does he say? It's sufficient evil. Maybe there is enough evil in you and me. When we look down on someone who is another Muslim, without any right, just because, let's say, they're not as educated as you, or their IQ is not as high as you, or they're not as well spoken as you, or they don't have the same citizenship or status in your country as you, or they're not as rich, or their house is not as big, or their car is not as new, or they're not as eloquent as you. Whatever it is, think of anything. When you compare yourself, and we always do this, we always compare ourselves to other people. When you always compare yourself, you shouldn't be thinking, I'm better than them, and I'm better than him, and I'm better than her. You shouldn't be. The default position should be, right, either that we're all equal, or everybody else is better than me. Because that saves you from pride. But when you look, you think that everybody else is lower than you, then you and I would be guilty of arrogance and pride, kibr. And if someone has a little bit of kibr in them, that thing is a major sin. So that itself puts you lower than anyone else, demotes you and me when we have that feeling. Kibr is something that is a major sin that takes a person to hellfire. At least they'll deserve it. So when you want to look down on someone, consider that the reason is because I have kibr in me, and that makes me lower than they are. So I don't have any right. Right? And the Prophet ﷺ said something also. He said, all of you are the children of Adam. Equal. Right? Equal. And he said, then the only thing that will be able to take you higher or lower is your relationship with Allah Azza wa Jal. But all of you belong to Adam. And then he said, some of you will either stop boasting about your parents and grandparents and your lineage, or especially if they are people of sin, especially if they are disbelievers, or Allah Azza wa Jal will join you with them in hellfire. Or he said, or you will be lower in Allah's sight than a beetle, than a dung beetle that is collecting feces. Because a person who is trying to elevate themselves not based on taqwa but based on artificial, non-real designations and merits, and they're not really merits, are really only demoting themselves and lowering themselves in the sight of Allah Azza wa Jal until they become like insects in the eye of Allah Azza wa Jal. Whereas those who are humble become, subhanAllah, like mountains. Their reputation will be like they're kings with the angels of Allah Azza wa Jal, versus those who are arrogant. Now, there's a weak hadith about the punishment of those who mock other people, especially, listihza. And it's a weak hadith, but I just wanted to narrate it just to see that, to tell you that sometimes the punishment, not sometimes, a lot of times the punishment for what we do is something like it. So what I'm going to say is a weak hadith, but it is that those who are making fun of people, it is said, that on the day of judgment, the door of Jannah will be opened. And they will be said, go, come in from here. When they want to get in, it closes. So they go back. Then it opens. It says, come in. They want to come in, it closes again. And they go back. And it happens so many times that they give up on the fact that they're going to enter Jannah, because every time it opens, it closes to mock them, as they were mocking people. Now this is what? This is weak. This is weak. Right? So it doesn't mean that this something like this is actually going to happen. But just think about the fact that when you mock, you're going to be mocked. And when you put down, eventually someone will put you down, because, or similar to the things that you made other people feel bad about. So same thing is going to happen to you and me. So whatever كَمَا تَدِينُ تُدَانُ, as you do, it will be done to you. كَمَا تَدِينُ تُدَانُ. As you speak, it will be spoken to you. As you hurt others, you'll be hurt as well. So think about it, inshallah. And then mocking people, right, is haram. Okay, you can disagree with someone. You can disagree with someone, but don't mock them. Don't mock how they talk. Don't make fun of their weight. Don't make fun of their profession. Don't make fun of the way that they walk. Don't make fun of these things. Okay? And adhere to those really Islamic principles where it says, if you disagree with someone, limit your disagreement to the thing, but don't mock the person. Don't make fun of the person, because it does hurt them, and you don't want a person to be doing that to you. Okay? Lying is the last one. And of course, lying is what? Is simply stating something that is contrary to the truth, and you know that it is. So you're saying something, and it's opposite the truth, and you know that it is. Not that you made a mistake, but that you know that it is. But here is an important addition. Sometimes when you speak in a way that mostly or definitely will lead to lying, even though you don't have that intention, that will be considered lying. What do I mean by that? The Prophet ﷺ said, كَفَى بِالْمَرْءِ إِثْمًا also كَذِبًا أَنْ يُحَدِّثَ بِكُلِّ مَا سَمِعَ. So it's enough sin. Another narration, it's enough lying, sufficient lying for someone that they relay and convey everything that they heard. So let's suppose, for instance, I'm on WhatsApp, or I'm sitting with someone, group of my brothers, a group of my sisters, and I'm listening. They're saying this, they're saying this, they're saying that. News, some verified, some unverified. Or on WhatsApp, I'm receiving a lot of messages, verified and unverified, about people. And I forward, and I share. Or what I heard, I come home, or I'm with another people, and I say everything that was said to me. I don't know if it's true or not. I'm just saying it. The Prophet ﷺ said, this is enough sin. That's enough sin, meaning I acquired sin. And it's enough lying, meaning I've lied. Why did I lie? Because this was unverified. And if you speak and convey what is unverified, you will ultimately fall in lying. Because some of it is true maybe, but some of it are fabrications. And so when you transmit fabrications and you know that the way that you're doing it ends up relaying fabrications, you are a fabricator as well. So Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam called it lying. So you must have a filter. You and I, we must have a filter. I can't say, well, somebody said and I just talk. Where is the source? Is this right or is this wrong? So if I don't know, I stop. I only transfer what is accurate, verified, verifiable. If it is not, if it's gossip, if it has no basis, I can't simply relay it and say, well, I heard, because I've been transmitting lies. So the Prophet ﷺ said what? We must have that filter. Not everything that I hear comes out from my mouth. Between with the ear and the mouth, there has to be a filter. That's why there's a distance between them, right? It passes through your mind, then from your mind into your mouth. So there has to be a filter between what goes in and comes out. Some of us don't have a filter at all. Whatever I hear comes out from my mouth. Now that can't be. Because then I would definitely be lying, accused of lying, and written with Allah Azza wa Jal as a liar, because there is damage in what I'm saying. Another thing in lying that we should talk about, which is lying about the Prophet ﷺ in his hadith. من كذب علي متعمدا فليتبوأ مقعده من النار. The one who lies about me intentionally or against me intentionally, let him take his position in hellfire. Means what? This includes what? It includes someone who actively fabricates a hadith against the Prophet ﷺ. And it also could include someone, if you basically just transmit everything that you receive without finding out whether it is accurate or not, just like the first thing we talked about. If you transmit everything that you hear without verification, that is what? That's a lie, right? And if you transmit every hadith that you hear, every hadith that comes to you, and you don't know if it is accurate or not, just somebody sent it. And they're not scholars, they're not sheikhs, they're not teachers, they're just simply people. And there's no source, and the hadith sounds a bit, iffy, and you don't know, but you still send it. If you keep doing this, then you're definitely sending not only some weak, but some fabricated hadiths, right? Fabricated information. And so we may become culpable as well and responsible for that, for lying against the Prophet ﷺ, because I've handed somebody, without me they would not know it, I've handed somebody a hadith that is not a hadith, and somebody was telling them the Prophet said, and I gave that to them. I did. So would I not be responsible? Why did I give it to them if I'm not sure that it's from the Prophet? And that confuses them, and that leads them, subhanAllah, to some strange practices maybe, or strange and odd beliefs, or at least confusion. So keep that in mind. Another type of lying that we should address, lying for laughs, lying for comedic effect, so that people will like me because I want to be funny. So I tell a joke and I lie, or I do something and I lie, and it's just simply for laughs. So the Prophet ﷺ, he said, وَيْلٌ لَهُ, woe to the person who lies so that people would laugh. Woe to him, woe to him, woe to him. Right? In total, he said it 3 times. وَيْلٌ لَهُ, وَيْلٌ لَهُ, وَيْلٌ لَهُ. When you just lie just to make people laugh. Right? So if you wanna be funny, you can be funny, but don't combine kadhib and muzah. Kadhib and muzah, meaning that you want to be funny and you want to lie. Is it don't combine both? Because you should be free of lying. We'll talk about, inshallah, why. But you should be completely free of lying. So you can be funny, but be funny and be honest. Be funny and be honest, right? And there are plenty of ways where you could be funny, and you don't need to be be employed as a comedian. You don't need to be funny 24/7. But whenever, right, you want to be funny, you can be funny, but without lying. And if you have a habit of lying just to be funny, check that and make sure that you stop. Catch yourself and stop and say, okay, I don't want to lie, because it will be written as a lie. You're gonna make some people laugh, but at the same time, it's written against you as a lie. So don't lie just simply to make people laugh. So why we shouldn't lie? The Prophet ﷺ said, إِنَّ الْكَذِبَ يَهْدِي إِلَى الْفُجُورِ وَإِنَّ الْفُجُورَ يَهْدِي إِلَى النَّارِ وَلَا يَزَالُ الرَّجُلُ يَكْذِبُ وَيَتَحَرَّى الْكَذِبَ حَتَّى يُكْتَبَ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ كَذَّابًا. So he said, ﷺ, what? Lying leads to fujur, sins, rebelliousness and sin. Lying leads to rebelliousness and sin. Sinfulness in general. And sinfulness leads to hellfire. So it's like a chain. And he says a person will continue to lie and seek lying until he will be written with Allah as a liar. Like his reputation or her reputation with Allah will be a liar. Now how does this start? By lying. Yakdhib. You start lying and it becomes a habit, more of a habit, more of a habit, until it becomes dominant. And when it is dominant, the person will be labeled a liar. Allah Azza wa Jal. And now it's a habit that they cannot shake off, can't let go of, because now they're lying all the time. And they'll find it easier to lie. Easier to say, oh yeah, I was late. Oh yeah, I forgot. And it's not. So they want to escape from blame. They lie all the time. And they find it easy to lie, so they keep lying. And it's easier, to get what you want when you lie, and to get away from things when you lie. So they keep lying and lying and lying until they're written as a liar. And they'll have a reputation as a liar. And when they have that with Allah Azza wa Jal, it's not far behind that they will have that reputation on earth as a liar as well. And we see that. The people who are lying and they keep lying, eventually you find out that they're lying. And you can't trust them anymore. And this is one of the sins that the Prophet ﷺ wouldn't forgive easily. As if he finds somebody is lying, this is authentic. When he finds that somebody is lying, he will continue to remember this until that person, he knows that that person has repented from it. He'll continue to have that between him, between him and the Prophet, and between the Prophet and him. He'll still remember and keep that in mind, that that person lies. So it keeps you away from the Prophet ﷺ until he knows that that person has repented. So why? Okay, for the thing that we said, that it's a chain. He said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, lying leads to sin, sin leads to hellfire. Just like obscenities. Remember that we mentioned obscenities leads to harshness and rudeness, and that leads to hellfire. So it takes one on a progressive path towards hellfire. So that's the first step. And it continues to escalate. When you take it, when you taste it, you continue to do it. So that's one. It's also, like what we said about obscenities, it's also a sign of the hypocrites. In fact, the most fundamental, we say, or the basic sign of the hypocrites is that they lie. Because that's what deception is all about. They lie in their promises, they lie when they are trusted, and they lie in their speech. They lie about everything. So the person who is lying resembles a hypocrite, and it's a sign of practical hypocrisy. Hypocrisy in action. So that sin is serious enough, that it had produced one of the worst people, okay, in hellfire, and that is the hypocrites. Because it drops them all the way to the lowest levels of hellfire because of their deception. So a person wants to distance themselves as much as they can from anything that will make them look like a hypocrite. But if they lie, they have a branch of hypocrisy in them. And if I'm lying, let's say, maybe I'm just lying once a day. Well, I have some hypocrisy in me in that day. Hypocrisy in me in that day. I make a promise and I break it intentionally, right? Or somebody trusts me and I, violate their trust. That's the branch of hypocrisy in me in that day. Until I get rid of it. If I don't, I'm partially a hypocrite. So that's important, right? Because we don't think about ourselves as we may have hypocrisy in us. Says no, yeah. If you lie, then some of it is in you and me. One of the punishment for that of lying is that the Prophet ﷺ in that night, when on his night journey, Mi'raj, when he saw some people in hellfire. So some of the people that he saw them with hooks ripping their cheeks all the way to the ears, and it heals, and they keep doing that. So when he asked about them, he said, Jibreel alayhi salam told the Prophet ﷺ, this is the person who lies, and his lie goes everywhere. A person lies, and his lie goes everywhere. So it spreads. So the damage spreads. Of course, so if you're a person in a position, or you have the tools, and all of us have the tools today, to lie, and for that lie to go everywhere, then we become accountable like that. And what is it? SubhanAllah, just imagine being, your cheeks or your face being ripped from the sides all the way to the ears, and then that repeatedly happening until the day of judgment, or maybe in hellfire. Right? So this is, an apt punishment because of why? Because a person who lies damages people's trust, takes what is not his, takes what is theirs. So that damage produces that pain. So you want to repent from these things and make sure that when you speak, you're saying the truth all the time. Now there are exceptions to lying. Exceptions, but these are what? These are very limited, particular exceptions, because the Muslim is supposed to be honest all the time. This is how you are with Allah Azza wa Jal. Because as-sidq yahdi ila al-birr. To get righteousness, how do you reach it? By being honest. You start by being honest with your tongue. That takes you to al-birr, to righteousness. Righteousness takes you to heaven. So you have to be honest. You can't compromise this. What are the exceptions? He said, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, when you want to try to reconcile people in a state of war or with a spouse, as I'll explain the last one, inshallah. When you're trying to reconcile between people, two people are fighting. There's hostility, there's anger, there's this, there are damages between them. You want to reconcile between them. Now maybe the only way that you can reconcile between them is to lie to them for a good cause. This is, for that thing, you are allowed to lie. What do you mean? What do I mean by lying here? Like what? Give us an example. You go to one of them and you say, I heard so-and-so say good things about you. So-and-so had said, praised you with these words. And then you go to the other person and you say something like that. Okay? Now for that, the scholars have said you can also use al-ma'arid, which is called the double entendre or the double talk. Something that it's in one meaning of the word, right, is right. The other meaning of the word, which the other person intends or understands, that is inaccurate. But you only mean the right one. You don't mean the other one. So for instance, an example from that, when the Prophet ﷺ was migrating and he asked for directions and whatever, then that person asked the Prophet ﷺ, he said, where are you from? So the Prophet said, from water. Right? From water. And then he kept going. And the person asked, what water? Like he's asking, what well or what body of water are you from? What ma? But that's not what the Prophet ﷺ meant. He said, what? Where are you from? Meaning, we are made from water. Now, why did the Prophet ﷺ speak like that? Because he wanted to hide who they were. So he used double speech. That's what they called, ma'arid. It means two things. You intend one, but the listener understands another thing. So you can use ma'arid. Okay? You can say, for instance, I heard him say beautiful things. When he was talking, and we were discussing you, and then I heard him say beautiful things, right? And you mean that by that, he was saying beautiful things about the sky and beautiful things. Maybe he actually said that. Beautiful things about the sky, beautiful things about the weather. Not about him, but that the listener will understand that. But why are you doing this? Because those people are fighting and you want them to reconcile. Because there are a lot of damages and hurt and that's happening because of it. So he says, in that limited area, you can lie. And it's better that you use ma'arid or ta'rid. Right? One thing, one word that has two meanings. If you can lie to them like that. Or in war, in a state of war, right? That's easy to understand. You lie to your enemy, to deceive your enemy, right? So that you can decrease casualties and you can scare them and you can, so that you can do that. The last one is, of course, is to a spouse. Now, what does that mean? Does it mean that you base your relationship with your spouse on lies? No, that's not it. But what could explain it is something that is narrated from Umar radiallahu anhu. What at his time, a person asked his wife, he said, do you love me? A person asked his wife, he says, do you love me? And I think he said, he asked her by Allah Azza wa Jal. In some narrations he said, I ask you by Allah, do you love me? And she said, well, if you're asking me by Allah Azza, no, I don't love you. So Umar got to know about it. So he asked her, he called her, and he said, what did you say to him? She said, well, he asked me this, I said that. Should I lie? He says, yes, lie. He first blamed the man for asking, but he also blamed her for that kind of answer. And he says, yes, lie. How many houses, right, are built on love? There are other considerations, not just simply love. You don't stay married only for love. But if somebody asks you for this and it's going to damage that relationship, just you can, right? But not all households are built on love. Some are built on love. Some are built on companionship. Some built on mercy and compassion. Some built on a mutual respect for each other, not necessarily this romantic love. So that's the kind of thing. It's not where you base or you make your entire relationship one that is based on lies. It's basically how's this food? The wife is asking her husband, how is this food? And he knows that she's very sensitive about this and it's a really difficult time for her. And he doesn't want to say it's bad, or it needs this or it needs that. He says it's wonderful. Just to make you feel better about that thing. That's fine. Or if he's asking her, am I the toughest, bravest person that you've ever seen? Right? And she knows that he's not. But, okay, but we have egos. She says, yes. So yeah, that's fine. Okay. So we're talking about those small things, right? Small things, right? But that they keep the love, they keep the marriage, it doesn't break. Because of, well, I need to be honest and tell them exactly what I feel about them. This food is terrible and the worst thing that I've tasted, and you're the weakest person that I've seen. You don't need to be that honest, right? Because inshallah, you can flatter a person and you can be nice and you can keep that relationship going, inshallah. So in that way, not that, there's not an invitation to just lie about everything. Oh, I was late, where were you? Lie about everything. I'm just gonna be late and I will lie to her. That's not allowed. Because once she finds out, or once he finds out that you're lying, they'll never trust you again. So we're not talking about those really significant things. We're talking about the small things, right? The small things, right? So those are the exceptions in lying, inshallah. Let me answer the questions for today. I haven't seen any new questions that have been posted. So first questions, we have 5. First question, are we allowed to backbite non-Muslims? So we know that the Prophet ﷺ says when he defined backbiting, it is when you backbite or when you say something bad about your brother behind his back. ذِكْرُكَ أَخَاكَ بِمَا يَكْرَهُ. When you mention your brother with something that he hates. So he said your brother. Now, okay, this is your brother. When it is usually mentioned in the hadith, well, who does it mean? Refer to another Muslim. Does that exempt non-Muslims from that so I can backbite them as much as I want? No, it doesn't. It doesn't. Because as there is sanctity for a Muslim, now the sanctity of the Muslim is the highest sanctity. But it doesn't mean that the non-believer's honor and reputation is also not worthy of protection, because you're not allowed to harm them. So the question is, okay, I'm not supposed to steal from a Muslim, but am I supposed to go and steal from a non-Muslim? Take their money? No. Am I allowed to go and attack their house just because they're non-Muslim? No. Am I allowed to go and attack their reputation without justification? No. So it's not simply the fact that the hadith talks about your brother, that I can go to a non-Muslim and I can just rip them apart and make fun of their looks and make fun of their family and make fun of this and make fun of that. I can't do this. So it's important, inshallah, to keep in mind that no, I cannot backbite non-Muslims. It will be forbidden. Okay? It'll be forbidden. It causes damage. It causes pain, just like it causes it for a Muslim. Right? And it may be, if I have wronged them, they may be worthy to receive something from me on the Day of Judgment. Right? And I may owe them something. Wallahu a'lam. So you don't want to owe anybody anything. And you want to be clean. So don't backbite anybody. And if you get your tongue used to backbiting someone, even non-Muslims, it'll be easier for you to backbite Muslims. Because it's a habit, right? It says, if there is a teacher who is, that's the second question. If there's someone who's a teacher, a religious teacher, but they're guilty of backbiting, how do we fix that? Well, I mean, it's the best way, inshallah, to give advice is to anonymously write something and to send that to them. Again, anonymously. So that one, because they're a religious teacher, they may not be so inclined to accept from their students advice. Maybe. So, inshallah, keep in mind that that sensitivity is there. Right? Because they're teachers, they may not accept advice so easily. So, the best thing to do, inshallah, anonymously send them something, and hopefully they read it and they respond well. Hopefully. Okay? If they don't, repeat that again. Repeat it again. Repeat it again. If after repeated attempts, make dua for them. If after repeated attempts, after dua, they don't respond, basically you can just switch to another teacher, because that's not a person that is equipped or qualified to teach, especially when they're committing that sin in public. That is when they're teaching, especially if they are teaching and they're backbiting people. Okay, what kind of example are they, and how able are they actually to teach you anything when they're doing that sin and they've been given advice and they ignored that advice? So give that advice first and be patient with them and make dua for them. Maybe they'll change. No one is perfect. Maybe they'll change. If they, after repeated attempts they don't change, I would suggest that you leave them and go to somebody else. The question here is about backbiting as well. He says, what if it's on WhatsApp in a group, and the group is talking about other people? They're talking about some other people and what have you. Is this also a gathering that I should leave? This is definitely. So the gathering that we should leave and avoid, gatherings of sin, are not only the physical gatherings, but virtual gatherings are also included. So if I'm in a group and they're talking ill about somebody, mocking, ridiculing, spreading gossip, whatever it is, but it is haram, I have either the option of responding and defending or leaving and not being part of that thing. So those are my only two options. One, I defend, or I leave that group. And that's how I keep myself, inshallah, safe from what is happening there. If we need advice, is it okay that as we're seeking advice, counsel for someone, and I'm mentioning the faults of my family members, let's say, is that allowed? That's the question number 4. It is allowed as long as it is within the need to seek that advice and not beyond. So if I have a problem with person X and I need the advice of the imam or the advice of the judge, okay, so I go to them and I say person X did this, this is how they behave, whatever. So is this backbiting? It says no, this is not backbiting, because you're seeking assistance, you're seeking advice, you're seeking help from someone. But when does it start becoming backbiting? When you start talking about things that are unrelated to your question. You gotta expand, mention more than what is needed, out of anger, out of frustration. He's this, she's that, they're terrible, this. When it goes beyond, it becomes backbiting. But in order to get an answer, in order to get assistance, you mention what is needed and only what is needed, you're fine, inshallah. So it's not disallowed, it's allowed, but within reason, inshallah. Question number 5 is, it says that sometimes we ladies talk too much. How can we be more serious about avoiding the sins of the tongue? Now, when we mentioned, the sins of the tongue, the purpose of it is not for us to stop talking to each other completely, and so all of us stay back at home, never having conversations. Some of us need to talk, and that's fine. You can sit and you can talk and you can have fun, and that could be, subhanAllah, a release that all of us need. But how do we actually distinguish, between what is allowed and what is not allowed? When we have done okay, what we are doing is okay, versus we're going into things that Allah Azza wa Jal hates. At least let's, in the beginning, focus on the difference between halal and haram. So if I'm sitting in a gathering, right, what makes it halal? What makes it okay? One, at least I should mention Allah Azza wa Jal in it, as we talked about previously. Some of the mention of Allah should be there. Some subhanallah, some alhamdulillah, something like that. Some of that should be there. That's one. The second, inshallah, no haram, no clearly haram things in it. So that is our first step. And let's try to accomplish that. So I'm not backbiting, I'm not gossiping, I'm not making fun of people, I'm not spreading lies, I'm not, being obscene or vulgar. I'm not, taking unverified news and spreading it. I'm not doing this. But we're talking about things that are halal. As long as what you're doing is halal, khalas, alhamdulillah, this is enough. This is enough. As a first step, and as a very, very important step, that's enough. You're mentioning Allah's name, you're saying salah and salam upon the Prophet ﷺ, and you're staying away from the haram. If you're doing this, then alhamdulillah rabbil alameen, you're good. Later on, right, you can try to limit our speech more, to focus more on more meaningful, more serious things in our lives, but that cannot be the first step. The first step is and should be, let us all avoid haram when we're talking to each other, when we're texting, when we're emailing. Let's avoid haram. Okay? When we go online, when we post, let's avoid all haram. In our comments, in our reactions, even the thumbs up, the likes that we gave, even to that, let's only like and give thumbs up and encourage only what is halal, what is right. But if we find something that is haram, never encourage it. Something that even questionable, never encourage it, because that's a form of speech as well. So do that, inshallah, and let's consider that to be the first step. Always check whatever you have done. Okay, I've sat for 2 hours or 1 hour talking to someone. Did I say wrong things there? Why did I say them? And ask Allah for forgiveness. And with the intention of, I'm not going to repeat that again, inshallah. So let that be, inshallah. Let that be the plan. There's a question here, how do we raise children who do not lie? First, inshallah, by you being the model and never lying. You should never lie. So you can't emphasize honesty but contradict yourself. So if you want to raise a children who don't lie, first you become the model and you never lie. And as you are practicing this, make it known to them that you will never lie, and why it's important for you that you would never lie. Why are you honest? And relate that to Allah, relate that to Allah Azza wa Jal, relate that to the Prophet ﷺ. So understand the ayahs, understand the hadith, memorize them even, or at least know the meaning and share that with them, so that they know from a very young age what integrity means, what honesty means, what a Muslim should be, and they should be always honest and they should never lie. Right? So maybe if you teach them that at a young age and teach them the stories of those who have been honest despite there are stories in the Sunnah about that. They've been honest despite pressure to lie, that they kept to what Allah Azza wa Jal loves, and how they were vindicated, and how Allah Azza wa Jal rewarded them for their honesty, versus those who chose to lie and they eventually suffered because of lying. So tell them that yes, it's easier to lie, but ultimately it's difficult, and it is in the beginning maybe more difficult or challenging to be honest, but eventually Allah Azza wa Jal will be with you. So you try to be the most honest person that you can. So by practice, by making dua to them, making dua that Allah Azza wa Jal saves them, maybe that inshallah will help. So inshallah we should stop here, bi'idhnillah. I apologize if it was too long, but we had a few questions. I'll try inshallah also to keep it, we'll try to adhere to half an hour inshallah as much as possible. Next week inshallah we'll be talking about, the author talks about music and singing. So we'll talk about music and singing inshallah. We'll see what he has to say about it and why he says what he says about it inshallah. What is allowed and what is not allowed. That is inshallah for next week. Jazakumullahu khairah for listening. I hope inshallah that you found it beneficial. So we finished, I think inshallah, the sins of the tongue, moving to something new inshallah Rabbil Alameen. May Allah Azza wa Jal make us of those who observe what they say, and they say the truth and they avoid lying, so that they're honest in their speech and honest in their action and honest when they meet Allah Azza wa Jal. Allah Azza wa Jal tells us to be with those who are honest. So we ask Allah Azza wa Jal to make us of those who are with those who are honest in this life and in the hereafter. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. Jazakumullahu khairah, and we'll see you inshallah next week. Subhanakallahumma bihamdik, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.